there, my friends, and welcome back to The Renewed Mind. I am your host, Ashley Varner, and I have been taking a break for the last several months, but I am back and I want to share some of the huge lessons that I've learned over the last 6 months. So if you are new to the channel, first off, welcome, but also I want to share a little bit about what I do. I talk a lot about taking your thoughts captive. So I work with Christian women to learn how to change their emotions and their thoughts so that they can really live a life that's aligned with the life that God has for them. And I want to talk about a subject that can sometimes get overlooked by coaches like me because it's way easy to talk about productivity and how you can change your life and goals and how to have positive emotions. But it's a lot harder to talk about the difficult emotions. So I don't like to call emotions negative. I think that they are uncomfortable emotions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad emotions. But there are definitely painful emotions, and good or bad, uncomfortable or great, all emotions are necessary. And I want to share just out of some of my pain and some of the things that I have experienced in the last 6 months. So at the end of the year, I had already planned to take a couple-month sabbatical away from the Renewed Mind to take a break, to spend some time with my family and my kids especially. And on the last day of the year, my father passed away very suddenly. I was really close to him. He was young. He was only 62 years old, and it came as a huge shock for me, for my entire family. And as I was grieving and learning how to live in a world that didn't have my dad in it, I really felt the Lord's presence every step of the way. And I want you to know that if you are experiencing some kind of loss, when you lose a loved one, it's important to have the time to grieve and to allow yourself to grieve. So I want to share 3 things that I learned from the death of my father and what I learned about emotions and thoughts and really about the Lord that I wanted to share with you, because I think whenever you lose a loved one, as a Christian, your experience is different than someone who doesn't believe in the Lord. When you lose someone and you know that they're in heaven, you know that they're with Jesus, you know the kind of life that they lived, the way that we grieve as Christians should be different, but we should still be grieving. And I think sometimes Christians can get into that mindset that we don't grieve, we know where they are, we're happy for them, it's a celebration, and we don't allow ourselves to have the natural emotion of grief. And that's something that can follow us, that we keep bottled up. It can really show up in other areas of our lives. So the first thing that I want to share with you that I learned is it's okay to let yourself feel the emotion. You need to let yourself feel the grief. It's okay to not be okay. And I think this is something that we as Christians can sometimes get the wrong idea. We think that if we're not okay, then somehow we're not being a good witness or we're not being a good testimony of the hope and the faith that's found whenever you live your life for Jesus. But it's okay to not be okay. I know several times when I was really in that first several weeks of grieving over my father, my sweet husband, he was able to recognize this and give me the space to grieve and to not be okay. He didn't constantly ask me, are you okay? Or what's wrong? He knew, and he was okay with me being not okay. Next, I want to share something that the pastor who presided over my dad's funeral said that has really given me so much hope and peace about my grief journey. And he said, we grieve deeply because we love deeply. And he said that oftentimes your grief is in balance with how much you loved the person. So someone who didn't know my father, probably someone watching this video, you're not grieving my father in the same way that I am, or at all. The people that you don't know, you're not grieving for them, right? But the more that you know someone, the more you love someone, the deeper you're going to grieve for them. And I think that that's a good sign whenever you're grieving. It means that you had that relationship, you had that love and connection with someone in your life. And it's okay. I keep wanting to reiterate that it's okay to let yourself feel. It's okay to give those emotions a name and to express them. And you don't want to fight emotions. Now, this is something that I teach a lot in my course, The Mindset Reset, but I really teach on giving your emotions a name and then experiencing what that emotion actually physically feels like. And this can go not just for grief, but for any kind of uncomfortable emotion that you're going through. If you allow your body to actually feel the sensations of the emotion, it loses its power over you, and you're able to be fully in the present, experiencing the emotion. And whenever you do that, you really tend to stop distracting yourself. And what I mean by that is whenever you are grieving, it is really easy to distract yourself with other things, even good things, things like work or your family, and you let that distract you from actually experiencing the emotion of grief. And what I'm going to tell you is if you do that, if you distract yourself from your emotions, what is going to happen is you are just going to delay that emotion. That emotion's going to get bottled up, and then one day it's going to come out in a way that maybe you're not expecting it to. It could come out in anger, it could come out in some kind of very negative behavior that you're not happy with or that you're not okay with. And so that's something that if you are really working towards, say you've just lost a loved one, I don't want you to give in to the temptation of distracting yourself. And this is something that I found I actually was distracted by some normal things and things that weren't really in my control. So at the time that my father passed away, we had 2 foster kids in addition to our 3 children, and I had 5 kids in the house. We had a business that we were running, and one of our kids in particular, one of our foster kids, was really difficult. He required a lot of attention, a lot of time, and I found that there were pockets of time where I was grieving. But when he ended up returning home, which was great news for him and his family, when he ended up returning home a couple months later, I felt a new rush and wave of grief that had been delayed because I was distracted by the duties of motherhood and taking care of the home and business. And so I really want to encourage you, if you are distracting yourself, just realize that it's not getting rid of the emotion. It's not getting rid of it. It is just delaying it. And then I also wanted to share with this regard to emotions is that everyone needs to be able to take their own grief journey. So it can be easy, especially if it's a family member and there are other people that are walking this grief journey with you, to let them be in charge of their own grief journey. Grief is going to look different for everyone, and whenever you try to compare or try to pull someone along with you, it's not going to work. And so what I have found for other people who are going through this grief journey with me is the best thing I can do for them is to pray for them and to really just model to them what I am doing, with all this mindset work that I've already done and the coaching that I do. I can model the right way to show emotion and the right way to experience emotion. I was really conscious of this with my older kids. Whenever they lost their grandpa, they were very close to him, and I wanted to show them that it's okay to cry. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be sad or to not want to do anything. Or it's okay sometimes if you just want to get away by yourself, maybe go outside, something like that. It's okay to remember them and to cry. Now that's the first lesson I learned, is just to let yourself feel. The second lesson I learned is to not expect the world to stop. Now, my world stopped on December 31st in the morning. My world completely changed, but the world didn't stop. And I think part of me wanted that. I wanted everything to just stop for a second so that I could grieve and I could have this so if my world was stopping, I wanted the whole world to stop, right? And it's easy to feel that way whenever you are experiencing grief. But as we found that following week, my kids had to go back to school, and we learned how much time, each child needed. So my younger son, he went back to preschool a little bit earlier than my older boys did, and our foster kids went to visits almost right away. And so you have to see that your schedule and the world's schedule is going to look a little bit different for everybody in your family. And for me, I didn't go to work right away. Now, there was a day that same week that my father died that I had to go in and take care of some business things, but I had to be really cognizant of the fact that the world wasn't stopping. Employees still needed to get paid, kids still needed to get baths. All those things are still happening, even though we kind of wish they wouldn't sometimes. One thing that I told my boys and reminded myself a lot during the first several weeks, was you don't have to move on, but you do have to move forward. And that really helped me to think, okay, moving forward doesn't mean I'm moving on. I can still move forward and do the things that I need to do and be present with the people who are still here and not move on so quickly. Moving forward does not equal moving on. And I think it's interesting, something that I recognized and just observed during this time is it felt like there were parallel normals in my life. So there was the normal of my everyday tasks and the things on my to-do list and the appointments that I had scheduled already before this happened. And then there's the new normal of the fact that I'm never going to see my dad again until heaven. And you're going to have that parallel normal for a while, where until being without that loved one becomes your new normal, you're going to have your old normal and this new, strange, difficult normal. That's okay. It's okay to embrace that. I still had, like I said, doctor's appointments I had to go to. I had a meeting a couple days after. We went to church after he passed away. All things that were already on our schedules, already in our normal life, things that we were going to plan to do that still needed to be done in your normal, but you have this other parallel normal where you know nothing is ever going to be the same. And I will tell you that that does pass with time, because pretty soon all the things that you scheduled before that happened, before the grief happened, before you lost that loved one, those things actually come to pass. You do those things and new things get scheduled already after you've lost a loved one. And so that doesn't last forever, but that is something that I observed and found really interesting. I want to also remind you, whenever in this lesson of don't expect the world to stop, is expect people to not know what to say or to say the wrong things. Because I have tried to comfort people who have lost a loved one, and I had no idea what it felt like until now. And there are times when people, they love you and they want to grieve with you, but they don't know what to say. And so the only thing that I have found really helpful is to find the people who do know, and the people who have gone through this. They are going to know what to say. And what I found was, as we were talking to people and people were coming to visit us and talking to us, I took note of the things that people said, not that bothered me, but the things that people said that really encouraged me and helped me. And those are the things that I want to say to other people whenever they go through this experience. Because it's true that you don't know what it feels like until you know what it feels like. And there's a saying that I've heard before that says, you don't need to get hit by a brick to know that it hurts, but sometimes you need to get hit with the brick to know how it hurts. And I think the same is true whenever you lose a loved one. It's a little bit different too whenever that loss is unexpected, or whenever that loss is, someone very young. And you don't know the pain until you're in it. And so don't expect the people around you to know your pain because they haven't experienced it yet. And that's okay. You can be happy for them that they don't understand the pain, and just let their good intentions be at the forefront and not necessarily their words. Now, I guarantee you that there are going to be times whenever people say things, and usually, unfortunately, those are the things that stick in your mind after the fact. But really try and take note of the things that people do or say that are very meaningful to you. One of the girls that is on the same worship team that I am at church, after she found out about my father, she gave me the tightest hug, and she didn't even really say anything. She just gave me a tight hug. And I will remember that. And if there's someone that I know is a hugger, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a tight, long hug, because sometimes that's all that they need. Just realize that not everyone is going to know what to say, and be prepared for that, and don't hold it against them. They really have good intentions. They really want to comfort you. They just don't know how. The last lesson I learned is no matter what circumstance that you go through, God is still worthy. Now, I have loved worship my whole life. I've been a worship leader in the past. I am part of a worship team now, and worship is a big part of my life. But whenever you experience grief, when you lose a loved one, songs and words just hit differently than they did before. I remember a specific song that I had heard before my dad passed away, and it was nice, and I liked it, but it wasn't really one of my favorites. And that song ended up being such a foundation for me after my father died. Some of the words say, "When everything is around me is shaken, I've never been more glad that I've put my faith in Jesus." And that really struck a chord with me, because I chose a long time ago to put my faith in Jesus. As a young girl, I've grown up knowing the Lord and serving Him. And when the hardest thing that has ever happened to me in my life occurred, I had that as a foundation. I had Him as a firm foundation. So I don't want you to let your pain keep you from your Savior. And that is the last thing that I want you to do. I want you to let your pain drive you to Him. Go to the Lord with your pain. Go to Him with your emotions. If you don't understand, go to Him with that. And you come to a point where you make a choice to say, God, no matter what, you're the same God that you were before this happened, and you're just as worthy now as you were then. And so if I'm willing to worship you when there's good times, then I need to be able to worship you in the hard times. See, it's easy to worship when things are good, but it becomes a sacrifice to worship when things are hard. So I want to encourage you to make the sacrifice, because this is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned. Yes, I want you to feel your emotions, and yes, I want you to understand that the world's not going to stop. But the biggest thing that I can give you through the loss of my father is to make the sacrifice to keep your relationship with the Lord as strong as it possibly can. You know, I was telling a friend of mine just a couple days after my dad died, I told her, I don't know how people make it through things like this without the Lord, because He's my rock and He's everything to me. And she said, Ashley, they're not making it without the Lord. That's why we see so much pain and hurt in this world, because people are trying to make it without the Lord. And so I want to encourage you, if you are struggling with the loss of a loved one, I don't care if it just happened or if it's happened 6 months ago or a couple years ago, pain is like waves. And so it is okay to not be okay. It's okay to let yourself feel, but it's not okay to have the pain keep you from Jesus. Okay, He's there to comfort you. He knows this incident, this loss didn't take Him by surprise, and He is here for you, right? He's He is on your side. He is for you. But more than anything else, in the loss of my father, the death of my father did not separate me from the love of my Heavenly Father. And that is the way that you can grieve well. That's the way that you can move forward in your life in honor of the person who's passed away. So I hope that this helped you today. I will be coming back now on a regular basis with more videos. It won't be on the same schedule as I was before, but I do want you to know that new videos are coming. I have really been praying about the future of the Renewed Mind, and I believe that God has brought me through this grief and pain, and He's still taking me through it, but He wants me to use my pain to minister to others. And so that's why I'm making this video. I hope that you guys are blessed by it and that it is encouraging you. If you are experiencing the loss of a loved one, I just want you to know that you are not alone. The Lord loves you and He is there for you. So just fall into the arms of Jesus and make the decision to trust Him with your pain, because He is very trustworthy. He is very faithful. All right, I'll see you guys next time.